Welcome back to Immortal Capital, the podcast exploring the true meaning of value, emotionally, financially, and across a lifetime. Today's guest lives at the intersection of speed, precision, and automotive industry history. Sam Hancock is a British racing driver and 2004 European Le Mans Series champion who has competed at the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans and raced at the highest levels of international endurance motorsports, including as a factory driver for Aston Martin. Beyond modern racing, he's become one of the most respected figures in the world of historic motorsports, trusted to handle some of the rarest and most valuable racing machines ever built. From Goodwood to Monaco to Le Mans Classic, Sam works with elite collectors around the globe as a driver, consultant, and advisor, shaping the way historic cars are raced and preserved today. Sam, welcome to Immortal Capital.
Thank you. Thank you for that very kind introduction as well.
I hope it was everything I said was correct.
Yeah, it's just you put a good spin on it. I should hire you as my PR. No, no, it's great. Thank you.
So, to start, I asked you to bring an object that represents value and legacy to you. Did you bring it with you today?
To be honest, I'm looking at it just across my office here. It's a very simple answer, but it's our crash helmets. I mean, it might be a strange answer and not the kind of thing you're looking for, but a driver's crash helmet is obviously, they're getting more and more expensive. They're carbon fiber these days. They're aerodynamically optimized, and for a crash helmet, you can easily spend in total, I don't know, 5,000 or something like that. And hopefully, they save your life, possibly several times. But it's more than that. It's your armor, and when you put your helmet on and you pull the visor down, you're transported to a very special place, which all racing drivers love, because as soon as the visor goes down, the outside noise stops immediately, and you're totally focused. You're totally, I would say, calm generally, and you're finally given the chance to do the thing that you love doing or have been preparing for, working hard for. It's finally time. And then the third aspect is the crash helmets tend to have the color scheme, the paint design that's a little bit like the tail fin flag of an aeroplane. It's your colors, it's your flag, it's your crest in a way. And most drivers will carry the same colors on their helmet, probably the same exact design, even throughout their entire career, with some small modifications each season. And so it becomes a little bit a part of your identity. So perhaps not the kind of answer you were looking for. I have no idea,
Oh,
but
it's a good
but
answer. It's a
for
valid
me,
answer. Like what
uh,
makes attachment to you is something that saves your life many
yeah.
times. So
Look, for 3, 4, 5 grand, there's a lot of value there, depending on how you look at it.
okay, let's take a step back and tell us a little bit about your story. What drew you to the wheels and speed as a kid, and
Sure.
what was your first experience into that, and how did you end up
Ye-
racing?
Sure. So, I think, like all people who get into a particular sport or activity that's maybe a little bit outside of the regular mainstream, for me, it was the influence of my father. He loves cars, has always loved cars, and when I was growing up, there were always one or two cars in the garage, not necessarily crazy expensive cars, just hobby cars. He was an apprentice mechanic when he first left school, and in the end, that was not his career at all. But his hobby became racing cars for fun on the weekends at a low local level, what we would call club level. But I grew up around him doing that, and I loved going to the racetracks to watch him drive at the weekends. And it was cool as a kid to have the race car in the garage. And then he started racing go-karts, so there was a go-kart in the garage. And from as far back as my memory goes, I wanted to drive that go-kart, and it used to lean against the wall inside the garage, and I used to walk out there every other day to see if I had grown tall enough to reach the pedals yet. And literally the first day that I was tall enough to reach the pedals, we went to a local deserted airfield with a bit of runway that we could use. And that was my first experience of driving something on four wheels with an engine and a steering wheel and just going up and down this runway
Okay, so your
like
dad
a
was a
crazy
racer,
person.
and then
Yeah, for fun, yeah,
he was
let's
doing
say
it for
for hobby.
fun, but you
Yeah,
started early, so you were able to do it professionally.
yeah, 100%. So I
Okay.
started racing. My first race in karting was when I was 9 years old. And then I stayed in karting until 16 years old. Um, and I had enough success to show potential, but not enough success to be scouted for any kind of junior team scholarship or whatever. There weren't really many of those, honestly, in those days. There's more now, um, but it was enough to, let's say, enough local level victories to say, yeah, there's maybe some talent here. We don't yet know how much, and enough to justify graduating to cars. And again, I couldn't have done it without without parental help. When I graduated from karting into car racing, it was into the race car that my dad owned, that he raced for fun on the weekends at a local level. Again, not a hugely valuable car. I think the trade value is probably 20, 30,000, but it still costs money to race these things. So I couldn't have done it without the support of parents. Not a chance.
Okay, and how did you end up in specializing in Le Mans type of races compared to, or did you do other stuff before ending up in Le Mans?
Yeah, sure. So my goal, like every up and coming young driver, everyone dreams of Formula One, and you dream of being a world champion one day. It's the normal thing, and the way it works in motorsport, it's like a big pyramid. So at the lower levels, let's say karting, on a global basis, there must be thousands and thousands and thousands of drivers, all with the same goal. And then when you move up the ladder, so you come out of karting into car racing at the lower levels, these days it's called Formula 4, but there's lots of variations. You start to fight against some pretty good guys, and very quickly you see if you have potential or not. But the big challenge for all up and coming drivers is to raise the money that you need to go racing, because even at Formula 4 level, well, today in karting, even at serious karting levels, where you're talking about national championships or European championship programs, you probably need well over £100,000 of budget per
Yeah, I have a
year,
friend
which
whose
is
son is racing in
unbelievable.
karting, and that's what he tells me. Like,
Yeah, it depending on the level you're doing in karting, it could easily be 200,000. I'm sure some people spend 300,000. It's completely mad. And then when you get into car racing, Formula 4, that I'm guessing now because it's been some time since I did this stuff, but I imagine a national Formula 4 championship budget requirement is in the region of 200,000, could be more. And then as you move up through Formula 3, especially into Formula 2, you're into the millions. So it starts to become very difficult. Off track in terms of the finances, but it becomes very difficult on track because this pyramid gets narrower and narrower as you go up each level, and you're fighting better and better drivers. So what I found was I was good enough to win at the lower levels, and I was good enough to graduate to the next one. But what happens is as you get towards Formula 2, as it's called today, the budget requirement is so crazy, multiple millions, that you need to look in other disciplines of motorsport to find opportunities to start being a paid professional and earn a living. Because if you don't have the right sponsors or the right private family backing for a lot of people, or the right financial backing, let's say from a Formula One team that has a junior scholarship program of some kind, like Red Bull Juniors, for example, then you need to find another way to keep going. And for me, that's when I looked across to endurance sports car racing, which revolves around the world famous 24 hours of Le Mans race. And then there's a global calendar of very prestigious events. And in that environment, I managed to get an opportunity, and I moved across into endurance sports car racing. It's a slightly different area of our sport. It's a slightly different discipline, but once you're behind the steering wheel, the job is exactly the same. And I was able to do quite well, and I picked up. I was able to turn professional in my early 20s, and I started to get better at quality drives for better quality teams. And for example, we won the 2004 European Le Mans Series Championship, and I was in that environment. So I was doing what we call sports cars and GT racing, including the 24 hours of Le Mans for like 15 years, something like that. I raced at Le Mans 7 times. I suppose one of the highlights was representing Aston Martin at Le Mans in the Premier LMP1 category. So that's the kind of race driving background that I come from. And then I moved across into historic racing, let's say semi permanently, but let's say officially, when that modern racing chapter seemed like it was closing for me in approximately, I don't know, 2015, something like that. I had already been doing historic racing a little bit on the side because these events were getting bigger and bigger. So the highlight is the famous Goodwood Revival race here in the UK. That's attended by, I don't know, over 100,000 spectators. It's contested by many of the world's most valuable, important, collectible classic racing cars. It's now contested by some of the world's most famous professional drivers, including many world champions. And that's a world that I had a foot in from my early 20s. I was racing at Goodwood from, I don't know, roughly the age of 20. Um, by invitation. And I guess I was early for a modern racing professional driver to be involved in historic racing. It was very unusual 20 years ago. It's now very common, and everybody wants to do it because these cars are so exciting. They are fantastic to drive. The events are huge now and just so characterful and so well supported by spectators, organizers, sponsors, and of course, the cars actually go up in value sometimes if the car performs well. So there's a big incentive for the collectors, for the owners, to hire professionals, as I was, to
You
drive
mean
them
in
to their
the
full potential.
historical races,
Yeah,
they can increase in value if they win
yeah,
historical races?
yeah,
So you have like the pedigree of the car before when it raced like modern racing, and then
yeah.
there's the pedigree that you can develop as a historical car racer. Oh, wow.
Sure. Look, the amount by which it potentially increases in value according to its performances in historic races varies considerably according to the car and the type of car you're talking about. Most of the value is tied up by the historic, by the what we call the provenance from in period. So in its whatever,
Speak.
10, 20, 30, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But part of the reason these historic race cars have real value today, and it's a huge market, and that's my business now. I'm a specialist dealer and broker in these very high value blue chip collector grade classic racing cars. Part of the reason there is a market there is because you have an unbelievable global calendar that is nearly all year long, every year, of outstanding racing events that, as an amateur driver who collects cars like this, you too can participate in. So if you got into this stuff, you could be racing at Monaco in 1 month from now on the actual Formula One Grand Prix circuit as part of the Monaco historic Grand Prix. And you could be there as an amateur driver, sharing a grid with a few high professionals that will include some former Formula One world champions, some former Le Mans 24-hour winners, serious world class motorsport royalty. And you yourself could be at the wheel of a historic Formula One car from the 1980s, the 1970s, 60s, going right back to pretty much the 40s. And you can experience that circuit from the steering wheel of a Formula One car. It's an extraordinary opportunity for, let's say, wealthy petrol heads, and that's just one event. The same thing applies at the Le Mans Classic event, which now takes place every single year on the full circuit that we use in the 24 hours of Le Mans, the modern race. And you can drive the cars that are part of that event's incredible history. You can do Goodwood, and then in between these highlight events, there's seasons and championships and entire calendars, very much European based largely, but there's some special events in America, some special events in the Middle East, there's some special events in the Far East, Australia. So you can be really busy if you want to be having fun in these extraordinary cars. And the really extraordinary bit about it that nobody on the outside knows is that generally, if you buy well, and if not too much, goes wrong, generally when you sell these cars, they should they should generally hold their value at least, and many times they go up in value.
And if you win, you're very happy, and your car went up in value. So like
Yeah,
jackpot.
I mean, yeah, look, it depends. So the cars that go up in value if they win a historic race are the ones that, let's say, are more of a tool, right? So let's say you're not worried about building the world's finest, most valuable classic car collection. That's a different thing. But if you buy one of the very many historic race cars that you want to use and go and have fun in the ways I've described, uh, it will be more desirable to the next owner if you have proven that it is a fast, reliable car in historic racing.
Mm.
So that's the incentive, let's say, for owners to buy a great car, maintain it really well with fantastic professional preparers, of which there are many, and occasionally hire a professional driver to show the world what it can really do.
Can do.
But it's not only about the professional, because if you only ever stick a pro in your car, then the next guy says, yeah, but I'm not a professional. So it was the professional driver that got the car's results. It's not the car. So it's a balance. If it's actually sometimes more powerful to be the owner, being shown, showing that you as an amateur owner can drive the car to a victory in a historic race. That tells the next guy that might be interested in buying it from you one day that he too has a chance of winning a historic race in that car as an amateur driver.
Okay, you covered so many things. I don't know. I have so many questions. Let's
Sure.
start with the simple one.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Before going into like collectible cars, like let's talk about like racing cars in general. Like from my perspective, it is a perspective that it's a rich man's hobby, or even uh, a rich kid's profession, because you need like a lot of means to be able to race. So, how much money is there to be made racing? Like, if you look at the only example I have of a very successful return on investment in car racing is and I was really mind blown when I saw that, is the owner of Aston Martin, who bought the company and then put his son in Formula One racing, and the value is like 10 times higher or 20 times higher. So he was able to achieve like what every father would like to achieve, having his son doing his passion and at the same time making money while doing it. Other than that, is it like what's the probability of it's just like wasting money out there?
Look, I mean, you're talking about Lawrence Stroll. He's an unbelievably accomplished businessman, incredibly clever and astute, and he has this amazing ability to spot potential, business potential. And I think he saw that Aston Martin as a brand was this contradiction between, I think it was winning the world's most famous brand or luxury brand or whatever year after year, and yet as a company it was very undervalued because it was performing so badly financially in terms of its road car production side of things. I don't really know the details, of course, of his deal, but I think he saw potential to solve that conundrum, to buy one of the world's most famous prestigious luxury brands for a discount price at the same time as he saw the future of Formula One and its potential for exponential growth, which has been fueled massively, or let's say triggered massively, by Netflix Drive to Survive series, which started a few years ago, and now it's created this whole boom, this brand new international audience with a whole fresh demographic. It's no longer just a geeky guys sport, it's guys, it's girls, it's multi generations. It's really a family friendly sport now. So they've nailed that. But generally, the cost to get a driver to Formula One from a standing start is multiple millions. And the chances of that driver getting into Formula One, let alone being successful, are probably less than 1%, probably less than half a percent, if that. And I think that it goes back to that pyramid thing I was talking about.
Yeah,
You start off with thousands, maybe tens of thousands of hopefuls, and it goes like this. And at the top, the air is very, very thin. So, yeah, if you're asking me, is it a good investment to try to fund a young driver to Formula One? Uh, it depends who you are and what your starting point is and how talented the driver
there
is.
must be like some emotional aspect to it, like it's your son, so and the
Sure,
money should be like there available to spend, and if it
sure.
comes on top of it as a lottery ticket and you get back your money, then you're like everybody's like very happy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it a little bit differently. I mean, I have a 4-year-old son, and I have no aspiration or desperation for him to become a racing driver, none whatsoever.
Yeah, but it's his aspiration, not yours, that matters.
Yeah, but look, if through exposure to the sport through me, it's something that he learns to love and has an interest in, of course, it would be a great pleasure to support him into that, but not necessarily because it has to all be about Formula One. For me, what I think motorsport does for young people growing up is amazing, incredible power to develop a young person, to develop their character, to develop their resolve, to develop their tenacity, their skill set, not just behind the steering wheel, but their skill set in life. You learn to work among a team, you learn to work, you learn to understand marketing, you learn to understand business, you learn to understand the mechanical technology side of the sport. It's just, it's an incredible way for a young person to develop and mature very quickly, because you can't do it on your own. You need the support of the team. And
Because you start early too, so you pick it up.
yeah, it's honestly quite amazing. I mean, sometimes occasionally I meet some of these young carters, and these kids and that are like 12, 13, 14 years old. You speak to them and it's like they're 18, 19, 20, even in terms of their
Maturity.
maturity, their comfort around grown-ups, their ability to articulate what they're thinking. And I don't know. I just think it develop. It's a wonderful world to develop people. And remember, it's not just about driving. There's hundreds of genuinely wonderful roles and jobs across the motorsport industry now. And if the driving thing doesn't work out, you can use the experience you've gained up till then and move across into
Yeah.
another lane and have a fantastic career. So I think it's a very special industry and massively under acknowledged by, let's say, governments, parents, even the media, for its huge benefits in those senses.
Okay. And if we move to classic cars or historical cars, so from what you said, what I understand, like there's the pedigree of the car that makes its value, but also like all these new historical car races that are popping up and becoming more and more popular, that can even increase this value. So, what do you look at when you want to buy a car, or what if I wanted to buy one? What would you advise me to look at when I want to buy a historical car?
So the first and most important thing is buy what you love. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people speculating, financially speculating in our industry, and they're buying cars purely as a financial investment. That is okay, but it's also dangerous because none of us have a crystal ball. None of us can say for sure what the market is going to do and whether these cars are really going to appreciate in value or not. What I tend to advise is start with what you love and what you plan to do with the car. So if you were to come walk into this office, sit down with a coffee with me and say, "Hey, I really want to get into this classic car thing," my first question is, okay, do you want to go racing? Is that why you're here speaking to me? Because I specialize in classic racing cars and I don't get involved in the classic road car side of the collecting world. Um, and if the answer is, yeah, I love this racing thing, I heard that amateurs can go and do this historic racing thing and it doesn't really matter your level, you're welcome and it's fun and it's a challenge and it's nice people and it's nice places, nice circuits, nice hotels, nice restaurants in the evening with good friends, good wine, good food, the whole thing. That's the lifestyle side of it. Then it's like fantastic, brilliant. So let's start there. What kind of era of car speaks to you most? Do you love very, are you, I don't know, I'm 46 years old, right? So the posters, the cars that were on my bedroom wall as a teenager are from the 90s, even
Hmm.
the 2000s. And in our historic racing world, they are considered a part of this classic environment. And there are markets and racing series for them, for sure. If you're a little bit older, my father, for example, would say, I love the Formula One cars of the 1960s and the 70s. Great, you can do that too. So it really depends on, first of all, what you love and what speaks to you, and you start there. And then we get into the next level of, okay, what's your experience level? Is this your first time going onto a racetrack? In which case, we need to start with something more humble, more friendly for a total beginner. And if you're looking for a real life example, I would say a pre 1966 Alfa Romeo GTA is a brilliant car because they are highly desirable, very collectible if you're talking about one with pedigree and period racing provenance, beautiful, eligible for so many different types of events. You can even use them on the road just for your personal pleasure with friends and family if you want. And they have driving characteristics that is very appropriate for a beginner. And what I mean by that is you're on narrow, treaded historic tires. So the grip level is low, and therefore the car slides across the surface of the circuit at a low rolling speed, which makes it easy for an amateur to feel what's happening and learn car control so that they can counter steer with the slide and learn how a car moves.
Yeah, but that's a very expensive learning session, I would say, because one of the risks that there is, and I find it quite crazy when you think about it, like you can crash it and then your whole investment is gone, right?
No, no, not at all. So, a couple of things. First of all, yeah, you can always crash anything, but the chances of crashing in a meaningful way vary according to the situation. So, um, if you came to me and you said, "Look, I want to get into historic racing," I'd say, "Fantastic! You have two choices. Are you the kind of guy that just wants a suitable historic race car to learn and develop your brand new hobby and skill? In which case, let's spend, I don't know, 50, 60, 70,000 on 1960s Lotus Ford Cortina, or these kind of what we call under 2 liter touring cars from the 1960s are a great entry point for beginners because they are really fun to drive from your very first day when you have no idea what you're doing. They are eligible for a lot of events, including high profile events. They're low cost to run if you're not talking about trying to have the last 2 horsepower from the best cars. And they're liquid. When it comes to sell it, you just sell it. There's another guy like you waiting in the line. So you can do that, or you can say, well, my name's Lawrence Stroll and I'm a very serious collector and a billionaire, and I only own cars with very significant pedigree. And that's when you say, okay, let's buy a Alfa Romeo GTA that has works team history from Auto Delta and is completely restored and very beautiful, and let's go and learn in that. Now, if you have a crash in that car, your investment is not gone. Let's say you buy the best Alpha GTA in the world and it costs you 600,000 euros. If you crash that car, the likelihood is you put a big dent in one corner of the car, maybe two if you're really unlucky. Well, to repair that might cost, I don't know, if you're unlucky, it might cost 100,000 euros. Yeah, but you haven't destroyed the 600,000 investment. Absolutely not. And this is the beauty of racing cars: is there is a necessary real world understanding in the race car collector community that race cars are tools. These are not garage queens. And from the day they were built, they were put onto a racetrack to be driven as hard and as fast as possible. And inevitably, through the trials and tribulations of competition, these grand old warriors see a lot of battles and they wear a lot of battle scars. And they have been crashed and repaired, their engines have been blown up and replaced, the gearbox is the same, the whole thing. And that's part of their charisma and character and provenance and patina and the whole thing. Whereas if you're talking about the parallel universe of very collectible road cars, where you have Concours d'Elegance judging panels at Pebble Beach or Villa d'Este or London Concours, it's a different thing.
So how do you decide when a car should be driven versus preserved?
It really depends what it is. So if you are lucky enough to find a true barn find, as we call it, which is a very special. Let's say you find a Ferrari from the 1950s, and it's been in some family barn for 40 years. Um, yeah, it's not in great shape because it's not been used. It's deteriorated over time, but it's totally original. It has never been restored. It's never had new paint. It's got its original engine, interior, gearbox, the whole thing. There's a very good case to say, you know what? we should preserve this car, even though it's now slightly dilapidated, slightly deteriorated. It depends on the level. Sometimes you say it's too far deteriorated. You can't use it. It's kind of pointless. It does. Let's restore it. Let's restore it to its former glory, and that's a wonderful journey because you bring this beautiful old machine back to life. You restore it to its former glory. You give it a new chapter in its life, and you can enjoy it and share it and use it and display it. And there's a whole scene there around the world, very prestigious scene at these very high level concours events at very beautiful, glamorous places. And that can be your classic car lifestyle if you want it to be. I'm not so much in that world. I'm more in the world of serious historic racing. And so you can have an original car, but if you're going to race it, there is always some risk that you can damage it. And the question is the damage that's possible going to undermine the investment? And that the answer to that question changes depending on the car.
And if a car is raced, I mean, there must be like a certain period, like even if it's winning historical races and so on, but there's like change of engines, change of gears, change of this and that. So if you race with it for 10 years, the end car is not at all a historical car because you change everything. So where does it stop being a historical race and not a completely new car that you're racing compared to the when it started initially?
Yeah, and you are striking the nail on the head of the endless debate in our world of what is the car. So if you're talking about the classic road car world that I just described, it's quite clear the market values what we call matching numbers. So when the car is built by the factory, the chassis has a number stamped into it, the engine has a number stamped into it, the body, the gearbox, and so on. And there's other smaller numbers as well for other cars. And they're all recorded on the factory build sheet. It's like a birth certificate. And the cars that are most valued today are the ones where the components still are the originals, as proven by the numbers stamped into those components. They match the original birth certificate, if you like.
Mm.
Now, obviously, over so many decades, in some cases of a car's life, components can be changed and lost, and you end up with price adjustments if a car no longer has its original engine. But in the racing world, it's different. Race cars are understood to have, by necessity, have had their components replaced. So I actually, if a race car is presented to me as having its original engine, depending on what it is, I'm not sure I believe it.
Huh.
Secondly, I'm not sure I want it because I can't. If that
You can't
original
compete.
origin, yeah, I would immediately say, well, it's nice that the car still has its original engine, but I want to use this car in historic race events. I can't risk, yeah, I can't risk blowing up the engine. So I need to take that out, put it on the side for preservation, and I need to buy a replacement to actually use in the races. Now, your question of when you change all these components, is it still the car? Yeah, the key component is the chassis, which you can think of as the skeleton of the car, the
Mm.
backbone of the car. Now, there's even some scenarios where chassis are replaced, many scenarios where chassis are replaced or repaired and replaced over time. And that's when we come to the importance of identity. So, the chassis number that's given to the car on the day it was born starts to write the story of its life. And if that car is raced hard and has its components changed and blah blah blah, but it passes from this owner to this owner to this owner to this owner all the way to today, with an unbroken chain of provenance and a known ownership history, then we can accurately chart and record and tell the story of that car's wonderful life in battle. And if along the way it's had whatever, 10 different engines and 4 different gearboxes and this crash and da da da, it's it's better if the chassis has remained the original. But
Mm,
sometimes you have to look at these chassis, they're unbelievably simple. They're just, in some cases, a few circular steel tubes welded together. So if the chassis has been damaged and repaired, you cut the tubes and you put new ones on.
yeah.
And how much of the original tubing is left in the chassis over 50, 60 years, 70 years? And sometimes, um, even if there's no accident to repair, through use, the torsional rigidity, the stiffness of the chassis softens, which reduces the performance and the handling dynamics of the
And you
car.
need to replace
So
it.
you need to replace it. So today we care about that stuff from a collector perspective, but in period, nobody cared.
Mm.
But the life of the car remains the same. So the identity, i.e., the chassis number, what it is, remains the same car, and that passes down through the decades to however it stands today. And look, all of this is priced in at today's valuations, and the market decides which of these elements are problematic and which of these elements are absolutely acceptable. And each car requires a slightly different filter through which you determine whether or not these are issues or no issue at all.
Wow. Sam, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. It's so interesting to hear somebody speaking with so much passion about what he does. I,
Sure.
um, I want to thank you for sharing your stories, your insight, and your experience on cars.
Yeah, with
And
pleasure.
I think you give us a new way to think about what truly lasts and whether it's a machine, a legacy, or a moment in time. If this conversation gave you a fresh perspective on value, make sure you to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with someone who will appreciate it. And remember, true value isn't what you own, it's what you preserve, experience, and pass on. Thanks a lot, Sam, and speak soon.
Thank you. If anyone wants to see more of what we can do, you can find me at samhancock.com or on Instagram, Sam Hancock Cars.